Today I'm going to show you how to knit this super easy, stretchy, and reversible ribbed scarf that absolutely anybody, even the most beginner of beginners, can make. So we're going to start off with what's called a long tail cast on. This is just how we get the yarn onto the needles initially. So you're going to make this very easy slip knot as shown. And it's kind of easier for me to just show you than it is for me to try to explain how to do it verbally. So I'm going to show you again in slow motion. And then you're just going to slip your needle through this knot and pull the ends to tighten it. Then you're going to start on your actual cast on. So we'll start off by wrapping the yarn around your thumb, pushing your needle through the hole, and then wrapping the yarn around your needle. Then you're going to take the needle back out of the hole and pull it tight. And that's how you're going to do your cast on. So we're going to repeat this again. Each one of these little loops on the needle is going to be one stitch, and we're going to keep repeating this process until we have 40 stitches on the needle for our scarf. Here I am casting on the last couple of stitches, and now there are 40 stitches on my needle, and so that's how wide my scarf is going to be. You can adjust the number of stitches cast on to adjust the width of your scarf, and you're going to turn your work so that the yarn is hanging off of the front of your left needle, and now you're ready to start knitting. For this scarf, we're going to do what's called a 1x1 ribbing, which is one knit stitch, which is what I'm doing here, followed by one purl stitch. And that's the pattern that's going to be repeated for the entire scarf. You're just going to do that over and over again. So in order to do a knit, you're going to make sure your yarn is at the back of the needle, push it through the front loop, front to back. So your needle is going to poke through the stitch like so. And then you're going to wrap your yarn counterclockwise. And no matter what, whether it's a knit or a purl stitch, you'll always wrap your yarn counterclockwise. Then you'll poke your needle back out through the front and bring your yarn to the front so you can do your purl. So for your purl, you're going to go back to front. So your needle is going to come through the front of your stitch, wrap your yarn counterclockwise, and then push it out through the back. Now you're literally just going to repeat this pattern for the entire rest of the scarf. You don't need to change anything, you just keep going. And I'll show you how to do these stitches a couple more times slowly. Once you get to the end of your row, you're going to end on a purl stitch or a knit stitch, depending on if you have an odd or even number of stitches cast on. So I ended on a purl because I had an even number. You can take a second, admire what you've done, and then turn your work so that the working yarn is once again hanging off of the front of your needle. And then you just start this whole pattern over again. So one knit and one purl. And that's how you'll create your scarf. You'll just keep doing this over and over again until your scarf is as long as you want it to be. You can continue using just the one color if you want a solid colored scarf, or if you'd like to get a little more creative with it, you can do a color change and you can add some stripes or some color work, which I will show you in a second. So if you'd like to incorporate stripes or different colors into your scarf like so, you're going to need to do a color change. And the way you'll do this is knit with your first color, in this case that's brown, until you decide, you've had enough. At that point, you'll take your scissors and cut your yarn off, leaving a bit of a tail to weave in later and make sure that it doesn't unravel. Then you can go ahead and pick up your second color, in this case mine is pink, and you want to grab the end of that color. So the way that I like to do color changes is I basically just start knitting with the new color. So what that means is I'm going to put my needle through as if to knit, just like usual, but then instead of wrapping the brown yarn, I'm going to wrap the pink yarn. And then I'm going to knit that stitch as usual and pull on both the pink ends and the brown end to ensure that my knit stitch is not too loose. Then I'm going to continue knitting my 1x1 rib pattern, but rather than knitting with just the one strand of yarn like I was doing before with the brown, I'm going to knit with both strands of pink yarn, so both the end of the yarn and the part that's attached to the ball. This way it'll prevent the yarn from unraveling. And when you first start, you may need to pull on the ends, especially the brown end, just to make sure that your stitches are tight enough that they're not going to unravel, but eventually it'll come together. So you're just going to continue doing that pattern, knitting with both the tail of the pink yarn and the ball until you kind of run out of tail. Now at this point, as you can see, the tail has pretty much been knit all the way into the scarf. There's not much left for me to continue knitting with, so I'm just gonna kind of let it go and continue knitting with just the one strand of yarn, which is the one attached to the ball. And then you can finish off this row and continue knitting the scarf as usual. So this is a super easy method of doing color changes. It does not unravel, and you can use as many colors as you want, make as many stripes as you want, and once you get more advanced, you can also do other things. You can do shapes, words, whatever you'd like. Alright, here I am doing the last couple stitches of this row, and just to show you, this is what your color change is going to look like. And if we flip our work over, we can see that there's the little tail from when I was weaving in the color, and we can just cut that off later. But in the meantime, you can start your next row and just continue knitting. You will notice that if you choose to do stripes, you're going to have all of these little ends hanging off of the edge of your scarf. At some point, you're going to have to weave those in, unfortunately. You can choose to either do that at the end of your project or as you go. So I'm going to show you how to do that with one of these ends, which is my cast-on edge. What you're going to do is grab a tapestry needle. That's just a needle that has a big hole so that yarn can fit through it, and thread your end through the hole. Once you eventually get your yarn through your hole, you can start weaving in that little tail, and I'm going to show you the way I do it. I'm sure there's more structured ways to do it. I find that it doesn't matter because you can't see it anyways. So the way I like to do it, which I think is the easiest way, is I find where my little knit bumps are, so where those V's are, and I go through them. So I push my needle through, pull the yarn through, and I just kind of continue doing that in no pattern, just in a random order. And I just keep doing that, kind of taking note of where the knit bumps are so that you can make sure your yarn is somewhat following that pattern and the end isn't going to be super visible. On darker colors, it matters a lot less because you can't really see what's going on anyways. But as you can see here, I'm following the general pattern of the knit so that my yarn's not like going all over the place. On lighter yarns, it matters a little bit more and you'll want to be a little more careful than I am here. But I mean, if anyone's ever close enough to you to see whether your ends are perfectly woven in or not, they're too close to you. Back up. Get away. Anyways, I kind of do this until I feel safe about the yarn not unraveling, so I like to weave in a good amount. You don't want to do too little, otherwise it could unravel. I mean, I don't know. But once you decide that you've done enough, you can just go ahead and cut the yarn. And you're all done. So you'll want to weave in all of the ends that you have, all the little tails. If you did color work, you'll have a ton of these little hairs like this hanging off that you'll need to do. But if you just did a solid color, you'll only have the cast on tail and what's called the bind off tail, which we'll get to now. So our last step is called binding off, which is just taking the project off the needle. And I like to do what's called a knit bind off. This is super easy. Works really well, and it's a nice stretchy bind off so you don't lose the stretchiness of the scarf. What you'll do is knit 2 stitches. Once you've got your 2 knit stitches, you're going to pull the back stitch over the front stitch and off the needle like so. Then you'll just want to repeat this process. So you're going to knit 1 more, so you again have 2 stitches on your right needle, and then pull the back stitch over the front stitch and off the needle. And continue repeating all the way down the row. Now once you reach the last couple stitches, you're going to continue as normal until you reach the very last stitch. Now you're going to knit that one once again, and pull as usual the back stitch off over the front. And now with your 1 stitch left, you're going to cut your yarn. I actually ran out of yarn, so we're going to pretend that I cut my yarn and then just pull it through like so. And then you're going to want to pull it tight and weave in that little end, and you're all done. I did not weave in my ends as I went, so now I have to weave in all of those, but once that is finished, you'll be done with your scarf.